Hi, welcome back to Trucking USA's uh, continuing series on PTL trucking. This is part 4 of that series. It is the final part in this series. As I've been saying all along, my goal here in part 4 is to kind of give a recap of the most important aspects, the most important points that I made in the other 3 sections. I'm also going to be providing an update on my experience with PTL trucking as far as my average length of haul, the total number of miles that I've run, and to give you some of an idea about, as I've continued to make this video series. I'm now at the end of my 7th week with PTL, and when I first started this video series, I was at the end of my 4th week. So I've had another 3 weeks of running, and so I wanted to give you an update on length of haul, total miles run, how many days I've run, what my loads have looked like, that kind of thing. I think I covered pretty much everything that I'm going to cover as far as orientation goes. If you really want to know anything more about orientation, then I'm going to ask you to go back to part 1 of this video series, and then if you have any additional questions about orientation or recruiting, the hiring process, whatever that was not covered in part 1 to your satisfaction, then I'll just ask you to leave me a comment and with your question, and I'll answer it that way. Okay, so as I said before in the previous video series, or the previous parts of this video series, PTL is a medium-sized trucking company operating primarily east of Interstate 35 in the United States. They operate international LT trucks and Freightliner Cascadias. All of them are automatic transmissions. All of them have either an APU or an EPU, which provides auxiliary power for running, refrigerator, microwave, your bunk heater, your cooling system, that kind of thing. Basically, all of your creature comfort loads while the truck is turned off. The trucks do not idle. We rely on the EPU and APUs to provide auxiliary power while the truck is not moving. I also want to discuss, so that's really a recap of part 1, right? Is the types of trucks we're running. I talked about orientation a little bit. Just going to send you back to part 1 to get the lowdown on orientation and recruiting and hiring process, all of that. As far as part 2 goes, I just want to provide a little bit of an update on, my continuing experience with my fleet manager and my loads. So, as I said in part 2, I think that the most important takeaway from that was that you are assigned a fleet manager, and that fleet manager is basically your supervisor while you're driving. My experience so far is that the primary mode of communication with the fleet manager, the most effective way to communicate with the fleet manager, is by using the messaging system on the Qualcomm. I run mostly at night, and so whenever I have a question or something that I need to tell them, I get I get onto the messaging app, I'll leave a message, and if I have a question, I'll leave a message, and they always get right back to me. I mean, it's within a couple of minutes. I'm not waiting hours to get my questions answered from my fleet manager, even at night or on the weekends. And during normal business hours, the turnaround is, during normal business hours, my assigned fleet manager is in the office, and if I send a message to him during regular business hours, it's I get an answer to my question within 2 or 3 minutes. I've got an answer, so I'm not waiting very long at all. In fact, uh, because of the way that communication works over the telephone, often if you send a message over Qualcomm, you get your answer faster than if you were to try to call. So that's one thing to know, is that response time is pretty good. Also, as far as I want to update you guys on my average length of haul, total miles driven, that kind of information, so that you can get a feel for what it's like as an over-the-road truck driver working for PTL. Now, if you're on a regional account or a dedicated account, then your experience is going to be different than mine, because I'm an over-the-road guy. So I have been with the company now for 7 weeks. I've driven 15,413 miles. I have driven 15,413 paid miles with the company. PTL does utilize the household goods table, as I said in part 2, and so the actual miles is always going to be a little bit different than the miles that you're getting paid, but that's just the way it is. Most companies out there run on the household goods tables. There are probably only there is a percentage of companies out there that do address to address, but it's a small percentage, and I don't know which companies those are. So every company that I've ever dealt with has been on the household goods table. So anyway, I have run for 39 days during those 7 weeks. So since I've been with the company, we've had Thanksgiving, Christmas, and now New Year's. This is New Year's Eve that I'm recording this video, and so I've taken some time off during the holidays. A total of 10 days that I've had off during those 7 weeks, and now that doesn't mean that you have to run that many days over the course of 7 weeks. I think that the standard for an OTR driver is that you're out for either 10 to 12 days, and then you're home for 2 or 3 days. And so I stayed out for a little bit longer, just because that's the way that I like to run. So anyway, so out of I've run 15,413 miles in 39 days, and so that is giving me an average of 2,782 miles per week if I'm running seven days a week. Obviously, if you're not running 7 days a week, then your mileage totals will be less, right? And so I think it's helpful for you to consider the total miles driven and the total number of days that you've driven whenever you're trying to figure out what your average weekly run is, right? These are actual numbers. These are my actual numbers. So, and then my average length of haul is 581 miles. And so I have run 26 and a half loads. I'm actually under load right now on my way to a delivery, but I'm counting the miles that I've driven under this load. So Uh, I've driven, I've run 26 and a half loads during those 39 days, and my average length of haul has been 581 miles. As I said before, if you're on a regional account or if you are on a dedicated account, it's going to be way different. But I think that my experience as an over the road driver is probably pretty typical of other over the road drivers that are working for PTL. I will also say that my average length of haul has increased over the course of the last 2 weeks. And I think the reason for that, and it's up over 100 miles per load over the course of the last 2 weeks. And I think the reason for that really is that as the company, as I've proven myself to the company, they've given me longer runs. Whenever I was new to the company, I think they were trying to figure out if I could get my loads there on time, if I could manage my time effectively. And as I've proven to them that I can do that, then they have trusted me with longer runs. And so I think that as we continue to go forward, my length of haul will probably continue to increase. And I know that, on the PTL website, it says that the average length of haul is like 700 miles. And I could definitely see my average length of haul increasing to 700 miles within the next few weeks if things continue to go as they've been going in the past 2 weeks. Okay. Another the next thing that I want to talk about is just to kind of give you an update from part 3 on safety. Talking about the Lytx camera system. I went into this camera system quite a bit during part 3. I'm not going to really kind of go any more into how it works. I have done some additional research since that video was made, and did find out that boy, there's a whole lot of people, there's a whole lot of companies. I would say probably just based on the small sample that I took, I would say there's probably 2/3 to 3/4 of all of the medium and large size companies out there are using this inward and outward facing driver camera. And so as I said before, the camera does record inside the cab, and as I said in part 3, I felt that the way that the camera system and the truck were set up together were were improving my driver behavior. I still think that way. I still think that this camera system is beneficial to improving driver safety, and I don't know that I really I really understood or appreciated just how much the way that the truck is set up is, I believe, improving my own personal driver behavior and making me a safer driver. And for me, anyway, being a safe driver is the most important thing to me. It's my own personal safety is way more important to me than the amount of money that I make. It's way more important to me than whether or not I get to a delivery on time. It trumps everything else. And so I truly believe that this Lytx camera system, the way that the camera system and the truck work together, is helping me to become a safer driver. And I got to tell you, I'm a fan, right? I'm a fan of it. I think that now, 3 years from now, will I still be a fan of it? I don't know. But 7 weeks in, I'm a fan of it. I don't think that it has invaded my privacy. I don't feel like the company is watching my every move, or any of that. The way that the system is set up, it really is set up to enable you to review um, your driving behavior during those times when you might have an event. I talked all about events and stuff in part 3. I invite you to go back and watch that video if you have questions about that. Okay, so I just want to wrap this up by talking a little bit about what I would consider to be the the pros and cons for driving for PTL. I'm going to start out with the cons first, and I have three kind of what I would consider to be cons, and these are issues that I have struggled with, and they're not deal breakers for me, but they are kind of a, you know, what I would call a bird in my saddle, right? Number one is that um, although I think that communication is adequate with the fleet managers, I would like to have more direct communication, meaning a telephone call with my fleet manager. I would like to have some sort of, you know, couple of times a week touch point with my fleet manager to discuss kind of how things are going, and to also get some feedback from my fleet manager about my performance. I think that PTL's approach is kind of a no news is good news sort of a thing. So if they're not getting in touch with you to discuss your performance, it means that you're doing well on your performance, right? They give you all kinds of metrics through the Lytx camera system. My performance has been ranked as excellent in the Lytx system. From a safety perspective, I haven't had any feedback from my fleet manager about on-time delivery or, you know, any of that. And so I think that I'm doing pretty well with the company, but I would still like to have kind of that a touch point directly with my fleet manager over the telephone, and you know, I haven't gotten that. So I have had telephone conversations with my fleet manager, but they've always been very focused conversations on a specific load, right? So I'm talking about more like performance management sort of conversations, and that really, you know, hasn't happened yet. So the other another issue, and I think that this is a common issue with PTL, is the availability of empty trailers. I've gone for periods where I had, you know, you kind of you have to find it, not find like go out and look for one, but you know, where I made a delivery, I was supposed to pick up an empty at that location. There wasn't an empty available at that location. I had to go to another location and find an empty. There's been a couple of times when I went to the location they told me to go to get an empty, and there also was not an empty available at that location. And so the uncertainty around, you know, whether or not there's going to be an empty trailer at the location that you're delivering to if you're doing a drop, it adds some frustration to, you know, to your day. And so, and I understand, you know, as I said in part 1, PTL is in the process of renewing their trailer fleet, and so they're retiring older trailers. And I think they may be, you know, because of supply chain issues with being able to purchase new trailers, you know, because, you know, everything, this is a common issue in trucking, is that everybody wants to buy trailers, but there's fewer trailers available because of supply chain issues. with raw materials and stuff like that. So I think that they may have gotten into a little bit of a jam with, having trailers available, new trailers available at, to replace the ones that need to be retired, and so that's kind of caused a squeeze. I've heard other PTL drivers kind of talk about this issue as well, so I know it's not just me that's experiencing that. Although I will tell you that over the course of the last 2 weeks, it's been a lot better, and so I don't know if it's just because of where I've been running, or maybe they've onboarded some additional trailers, but several weeks ago the issue was more severe than it has been in the last couple of weeks. And for the last 2 weeks, I've only had one load where I had to go to another location to find an empty trailer, and there was a trailer available to me or for me, when I got to that location. And it wasn't like I had to drive like a huge amount of distance. It was like 25 miles away to another customer location where I was able to get an empty trailer. So the problem is getting better, but it is still kind of a hassle. And then the final thing that I think is has been a frustration for me is knowing how much accessorial pay that you're going to get. And so what I mean by that is, let's say that you have to go pick up an empty trailer, right? So they pay you to do that, right? If you had to go pick up an empty trailer, there's payment associated with that, but it's been a little bit inconsistent. One time I got $25, another time I got $75. So, and I didn't know what that amount was going to be until I got my paycheck. So, it is a little bit kind of like you're trying to figure out exactly how much your pay is going to be, and how much your pay is going to be based on your mileage pay. That's not the issue, but these other little extra payments that you may get for detention or layover or breakdown or finding an empty trailer, you'll get those payments, but you may not exactly know how much that is going to be until you see your paycheck. At least that's been my experience. And so I would like it if we were told, hey, we're giving you an additional $25 to go pick up this empty trailer. All right, so and now I want to talk about some of the things that I really like about PTL. Number one is even though it's not, it's kind of goes along a little bit with the con that I had about communication, but the pro is that communication over the Qualcomm is extremely effective, and I have yet to have to wait for an unreasonable amount of time to get an answer to a question or to get my next load or whatever, right? I'm not sitting there waiting for dispatch to get back to me and say, hey, here's where you're going next. The communication on your next load is pretty much instantaneous as soon as you drop off a load. I have yet to have to wait for to find out where my next load is. And so that's been great. With my last company, sometimes I waited for a day or 2 days while they tried to find me another load, and PTL has been really kind of Johnny on the spot with having a load for you whenever you get to your delivery. And I think that some of that has to do with the fact that I always make sure that I am communicating well in advance of when I'm going to be at my delivery location, at least a day in advance. I know, because of the way that I kind of plan my routes, I can normally tell within a 30-minute time frame of when I'm going to arrive at a location, and also how many hours I'm going to have left on my clock whenever I get there. I communicate that to my dispatcher, and I do it well in advance, and that allows them to be prepared for me, to keep me moving. I think if you don't do that, then and you wait to get your next load, then I think that's kind of on you, right? Because you're the driver. Uh, Everyone who goes through trucking school gets training on how to estimate your time of arrival, and if you're not communicating that effectively, then planning and customer service and your dispatching, you're not giving them the opportunity to be prepared for you whenever you get there. But the way that I manage my time and do my load planning or my trip planning, and then how I communicate my estimated time of arrival, I think allows dispatch, customer service, and planning at the terminal to be prepared for me whenever I get there, and it works great. So I've been very pleased. There's a partnership there that I think works well. The second big pro that I want to talk about is that PTL utilizes a driver coach for your first 90 days that you are with the company, and your driver coach calls you, and they they're wanting to know how you're doing, if you are having any problems, if you have any concerns, and then they feed that back to the operations department in regular updates that they have, so that driver feedback can be given back to fleet management. And having someone that calls you once a week and says, "Hey, how you doing? Is there anything that you're seeing that we need to address?" I think is really good. I really appreciate the fact that you got this driver coach that's proactively reaching out to you to get your concerns, and then taking action based on those concerns to make it better, not only for you but for everybody else, right? That's a very progressive and forward-thinking strategy that PTL has, and I really appreciate it. And then the final kind of good thing that I'll say about PTL is that I really appreciate how the kind of the everything else that's not dispatch, right? So most of your job is dealing with dispatch, but there's also other things that come up, like maybe you have a pay question, or maybe you have a question about your logs, or maybe you want to talk to safety about something, or HR, or whatever. And over the course of the last 7 weeks, I've had questions that have come up that I wanted to talk to somebody about. And the support organization, the way that the company kind of wraps themselves around drivers and to answer your questions and solve your problems, whether you got a breakdown issue, whether you got a question about benefits or your logs or whatever, it's been great. They're very nice, really knowledgeable. They have people, the people that answer the phone for road breakdown. If you have an issue, those folks are mechanics. They're not just somebody who picks up the phone and doesn't know anything about these trucks. They know about the trucks. They're able to help you troubleshoot an issue if something comes up, and then and get you help if you need it right away. And so I think that I talked a little bit about this in part two, but I am continued to be impressed by the support organizations that PTL has, the people and how they deal with driver questions. It's been great. So, all right. So, I hope that this video series has helped you. If there's something that I didn't cover that you want to know, please leave me a comment. Also, please consider liking the video and subscribing to my channel, Trucking USA. If you want to know more about how to become a PTL driver, I will, as with the other videos, put in the description the recruiting phone number, and then also my name and driver referral code. And if you will put my name and driver referral code on your application, it would really help me a lot. And then if you have any questions that I didn't answer, please leave me a comment. Leave your question in the comments section, and I promise you I'll answer you just as soon as I can. Also, consider staying tuned to my channel. I'm going to be the next thing that I'm going to be doing is a new driver education series, and I think that it may be helpful to you if you're a new driver. Doesn't have anything to do with PTL. It's just a series of videos that I'm going to be doing to help people who are new to trucking get some information that they may find helpful to them. So, and if you have any friends that are considering going to trucking school, I hope you'll send them to the channel, because the first couple of videos will be about how to choose and pay for trucking school, and then also some information about, just the job in general and being a truck driver. Okay, that's all that I have for this video series. I hope that you found the information helpful, and I hope to see you out there on the road. Be safe, be happy, happy trucking.